Welcome, dear friends, to a thrilling story of love, resilience, and unexpected encounters. Enjoy the story. The fluorescent lights flickered in the hospital break room as Emily, a young nurse's aide with dreams of a better life, sipped her coffee and checked her phone. Her heart raced as she saw a message from Andrew, the handsome doctor she had been secretly dating for the past 6 months. "Can't wait to see you tonight," the message read, followed by a string of heart emojis. Emily smiled, her cheeks flushing with excitement. She knew that their relationship was forbidden. Andrew came from a wealthy, influential family, while she was just a small-town girl trying to make it in the big city. But their love was strong, and Emily was convinced that they could overcome any obstacle. As she was about to reply, the door creaked open, and Zelda, the elderly cleaner, shuffled into the room. Zelda fixed Emily with a knowing look, her eyes sharp beneath her thick glasses. "You be careful with that boy, Missy," Zelda warned, her voice gravelly with age and experience. "Rich folks like him, they don't marry girls like us. They just use us and toss us aside when they're done." Emily bristled, her hands clenching around her phone. "Andrew's not like that," she insisted, her voice rising with indignation. "He loves me, and I love him. We're going to be together forever." Zelda shook her head, a sad smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I've seen it all before, child. But if you won't listen to an old woman's advice, then I suppose you'll have to learn the hard way." With that, Zelda turned and left the room, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts. She knew that Zelda meant well, but she couldn't help feeling angry at the old woman's pessimism. She and Andrew had something special, something that could never be broken. And now, she had even more reason to believe in their love. Emily placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the tiny flutter of life growing inside her. She was pregnant with Andrew's child, and she couldn't wait to tell him the good news. The restaurant was crowded and noisy, but Emily barely noticed the chaos around her. All she could focus on was Andrew's face, his handsome features twisted with anger and disbelief. "You're what?" he hissed, his voice low and menacing. Emily swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm pregnant, Andrew. We're going to have a baby." She had expected him to be thrilled, to sweep her into his arms and promise to love and protect her forever. But instead, he looked at her like she was something dirty, something to be ashamed of. "This can't be happening," he muttered, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "I can't have a baby, not now. My family would never approve." Emily's eyes widened, her stomach twisting with fear. "But I thought you loved me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought we were going to be together forever." Andrew laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that cut through her like a knife. "Love? You really think I loved you? You were just a bit of fun, something to pass the time. I never intended to marry you, and I certainly never wanted a kid." He stood up abruptly, tossing a handful of bills onto the table. "Get rid of it," he snapped, his eyes cold and unfeeling. "I don't care how you do it, but make sure it's gone, and don't ever contact me again." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emily sitting alone in the middle of the crowded restaurant. She felt like she couldn't breathe, like the walls were closing in around her. How could she have been so wrong about him? How could she have let herself believe in a fantasy that was never meant to be? Tears streamed down her face as she stumbled out of the restaurant, her heart shattered into a million pieces. She had given Andrew everything, her love, her trust, her body. And now, he had thrown it all away like it meant nothing. As she walked home, the city lights blurring through her tears, Emily made a vow to herself. She would keep this baby, no matter what it took. She would love it and protect it with every fiber of her being, even if she had to do it all on her own. The next morning, Emily dragged herself into work, her eyes red and swollen from crying all night. She knew that she looked like a mess, but she didn't care. All she could think about was the tiny life growing inside her, and how she was going to provide for it on her meager salary. As she was changing into her scrubs, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Her heart leapt into her throat when she saw the name on the screen, Vanessa, Andrew's mother. With trembling fingers, she accepted the call. "Hello," she stammered, her voice shaking. "Miss Emily." Vanessa's voice was cold and clipped, with an undercurrent of barely contained rage. "I believe we have some matters to discuss." Emily's stomach dropped. She knew that Vanessa must have found out about the pregnancy, and that she was probably furious. But before she could say anything, Vanessa continued. "I'm going to make this very simple for you, Miss Emily. You are to terminate this pregnancy immediately and leave town within the next 24 hours. If you do so, I will ensure that you are compensated handsomely for your troubles." Emily's mouth fell open in shock. I can't do that," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is my baby, and I'm keeping it." Vanessa's voice turned icy. "You foolish girl. Do you really think that you can raise a child on your own? Do you think that Andrew will ever acknowledge it as his own? You are nothing to him, and you will always be nothing." Tears streamed down Emily's face as she listened to Vanessa's cruel words. She knew that the older woman was right. She was just a poor, uneducated girl from a small town, with no family or friends to support her. How could she possibly hope to give her child the life it deserved? But even as despair threatened to overwhelm her, Emily felt a flicker of something else, a fierce, burning love for the tiny life inside her. She placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the warmth and strength of her own body. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Vanessa," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But I won't give up my baby, not for anything in the world. And if Andrew doesn't want to be a part of its life, then that's his loss. But I will love this child with every beat of my heart, and I will do whatever it takes to give it a good life." There was a long, tense silence on the other end of the line. Then Vanessa spoke, her voice dripping with venom. "Very well, Miss Emily, but know this. You have made a powerful enemy today, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that you regret your decision for the rest of your miserable life." With that, the line went dead, leaving Emily standing alone in the hospital locker room, her heart racing with fear and determination. She knew that Vanessa's words were not an idle threat. The woman had the money and influence to make her life a living hell. But Emily also knew that she had something that Vanessa could never take away from her, the love and strength of a mother's heart. And with that love, she knew that she could face anything that the world threw at her. The train rattled and swayed as it made its way through the countryside, the rolling hills and green fields a blur outside the window. Emily sat in her seat, her eyes fixed on the horizon, her mind churning with thoughts of the future. She had lost everything in the past 24 hours, her job, her home, her dreams of a life with Andrew. Vanessa had made good on her threats, using her influence to have Emily fired from the hospital and evicted from her tiny apartment. With nowhere else to go, Emily had packed her few belongings and bought a one-way ticket back to her hometown of Oakville. As the train chugged along, Emily thought back to her childhood in Oakville, the long, lazy summers spent playing in the fields, the cozy winters curled up by the fire with a good book. It had been a simple life, but a happy one, filled with love and laughter. But then, as she grew older, Emily had begun to dream of something more. She had watched her mother struggle to make ends meet, working long hours at the local diner for minimum wage. She had seen the toll that poverty and hardship had taken on her mother's body and spirit, and she had vowed to herself that she would never end up like that. So, as soon as she had graduated from high school, Emily had packed her bags and headed for the city, determined to make something of herself. She had enrolled in nursing school, working night shifts at the hospital to pay for her tuition. It had been hard, grueling work, but Emily had never complained. She knew that she was building a better life for herself, one step at a time. But now, as she sat on the train back to Oakville, Emily couldn't help but feel like a failure. She had given up everything for a man who had never truly loved her, and now she was running back home with nothing to show for it but a broken heart and a baby on the way. As the train pulled into the station, Emily took a deep breath and gathered her courage. She knew that the road ahead would be hard, but she also knew that she had the strength and determination to make it through. She would build a new life for herself and her child, even if it meant starting from scratch. With a heavy heart, Emily stepped off the train and into the bright sunlight of Oakville. She had no idea what the future held, but she knew that she would face it with her head held high and the love of her child to guide her every step of the way. As Emily walked through the familiar streets of Oakville, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The town had changed since she had last been there, with new buildings and businesses popping up on every corner. It was as if the sleepy little village she had grown up in had been transformed overnight into a bustling center of activity. As she turned the corner onto her old street, Emily's heart skipped a beat. There, sitting on the front porch of her childhood home, was her mother, looking older and more tired than Emily had ever seen her. But as soon as she caught sight of her daughter, the older woman's face split into a wide, joyful grin. "Emily!" she cried, rushing down the steps to embrace her daughter. "Oh, my sweet girl, I've missed you so much." Emily felt tears springing to her eyes as she hugged her mother tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. It had been so long since she had felt the warmth and comfort of her mother's arms, and she hadn't realized just how much she had needed it until now. "I've missed you too, Mom," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry for staying away for so long. I needed to find my own way in the world." Her mother pulled back, cupping Emily's face in her hands. "And you have, my darling. You've grown into such a strong, beautiful woman. I'm so proud of you." But as she looked closer at her daughter's face, the older woman's brow furrowed with concern. "Emily, what's wrong? You look like you've been crying." Emily took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to find the words to explain everything that had happened. But as she opened her mouth to speak, she found herself breaking down into sobs, the weight of everything she had been through crashing down on her all at once. Her mother gathered her into her arms, rocking her gently back and forth like she had done when Emily was a little girl. "Shh, my love, it's all right. You're safe now. You're home. And whatever it is that's troubling you, we'll face it together." As Emily clung to her mother, pouring out her heart in her tears, she felt a glimmer of hope beginning to take root in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, coming home hadn't been a mistake after all. Maybe, with the love and support of her family, she could find the strength to build a new life for herself and her child. And as the sun began to set over the hills of Oakville, casting a warm golden glow over the town, Emily knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Home at last, in the arms of the people who loved her most in the world. 10 years had passed since Emily had returned to Oakville, and in that time, her life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. With the help of her mother and the support of her hometown community, she had been able to finish her nursing degree and secure a job at the local clinic. It hadn't been easy, balancing work and motherhood, but Emily had never been one to shy away from a challenge. Her son, Liam, had grown into a bright, curious little boy, with his mother's kind heart and his father's striking blue eyes. Emily had never told him the truth about Andrew, choosing instead to focus on the love and warmth of the family they had built together in Oakville. But now, as Emily sat in the waiting room of the clinic, her heart racing with fear, she couldn't help but think of all the moments she had missed with her son. Liam had come down with a high fever and a rash, and the doctors were still running tests to determine the cause. As she sat there, her head in her hands, Emily felt a gentle touch on her shoulder. She looked up to see Sam, the kind-hearted businessman who had taken a chance on her all those years ago, offering her a job and a place to live when she had nothing. "Hey there, Emily," he said softly, his eyes filled with concern. "I heard about Liam. How are you holding up?" Emily felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "I'm scared, Sam. I don't know what I'll do if something happens to him. He's my whole world." Sam sat down beside her, taking her hand in his. "I know, Emily, but you're not alone in this. You have so many people who love you and Liam, who will do anything to help you through this." Emily looked up at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. Over the years, Sam had become more than just her boss. He had become her friend, her confidant, and her rock. He had been there for her through every up and down, always ready with a kind word or a helping hand. "Thank you, Sam," she whispered, squeezing his hand tightly. "I don't know what I would do without you." Just then, The doctor emerged from Liam's room, a small smile on her face. "Miss Johnson, your son is going to be just fine. It's just a case of strep throat and we've started him on antibiotics. He should be feeling better in no time." Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her, so powerful that it nearly knocked her off her feet. She turned to Sam, her face splitting into a wide, joyful grin. "Did you hear that? He's going to be okay." Sam laughed, pulling her into a tight hug. "Of course he is, Emily. He's a fighter, just like his mom." As they walked down the hallway together, hand in hand, Emily felt a warmth spreading through her chest. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, that there would be more challenges and obstacles to come. But with Sam by her side, and the love of her family to guide her, she knew that she could face anything that life threw her way. And as they stepped out into the bright sunlight of Oakville, Emily knew that she had finally found the happiness and love that she had always dreamed of. It had been a long, winding journey, full of heartbreak and pain, but in the end, it had all been worth it. Because now, she had everything she had ever wanted. A loving family, a fulfilling career, and a brighter tomorrow, shining just over the horizon. 2 years had passed since Liam's illness, and in that time, Emily and Sam's relationship had blossomed into something beautiful and true. Sam had been patient and understanding, giving Emily the time and space she needed to heal from her past hurts and learn to trust again. He had been there for her through every challenge and triumph, always ready with a kind word or a shoulder to cry on. And slowly but surely, Emily had felt herself falling for him, drawn to his warmth, his humor, and his unwavering devotion to her and Liam. But still, she hesitated. The scars of her past were deep, and she couldn't help but fear that history would repeat itself, that she would give her heart to another man only to have it broken once again. One evening, as they sat together on the porch swing, watching the sun set over the hills of Oakville, Sam turned to her, his eyes filled with love and understanding. "Emily," he said softly, taking her hand in his, "I know that you've been through a lot, and I know that it's not easy for you to trust again, but I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I love you, and I love Liam, and I will spend every day of my life proving that to you, if you'll let me." Emily felt tears springing to her eyes, her heart swelling with a love so strong that it took her breath away. She knew in that moment that Sam was different, that he was the one she had been waiting for all her life. "I love you too, Sam," she whispered, leaning in to kiss him softly. "And I trust you with my heart, and with my son's heart. I know that you will never let us down." From that day forward, Emily and Sam were inseparable. They built a life together, filled with love, laughter, and endless adventures. Liam thrived under their care, growing into a kind, compassionate young man who loved his family with all his heart. And Emily knew that she had finally found the happiness she had always dreamed of, the love that she had once thought was lost to her forever. With Sam by her side, and Liam as the light of her life, she knew that she could face anything that the world threw her way. The sun was high in the sky as Emily and her family arrived at the beach resort, ready for a week of relaxation and fun. Liam raced ahead, eager to feel the sand between his toes and the salt spray on his face. Sam and Emily followed behind, hand in hand, their hearts full of joy and contentment. But as they made their way down to the water's edge, Emily spotted a figure in the distance that made her heart stop cold. It was a woman, older and more frail than she remembered, but there was no mistaking those piercing blue eyes and that haughty, aristocratic bearing. It was Vanessa, Andrew's mother. Emily felt a wave of panic wash over her, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. What was Vanessa doing here? Had she somehow found out about Liam? Was she here to take him away from her, to destroy the happy life she had built for herself? But as she watched, Emily realized that something was wrong. Vanessa was swaying on her feet, her face pale and drawn. Suddenly she collapsed to the ground, her body convulsing in the sand. Without thinking, Emily raced to her side, her nursing instincts kicking in. She checked Vanessa's pulse, her breathing, her responsiveness. The older woman was barely conscious, her skin clammy and cool to the touch. Someone call an ambulance! Emily shouted, her voice sharp with urgency. She needs medical attention now. As the paramedics arrived and loaded Vanessa onto a stretcher, Emily caught a glimpse of the older woman's face. There was something different about her, something softer and more vulnerable than she had ever seen before. And in that moment, Emily realized that Vanessa was just a human being, like anyone else. A woman who had made mistakes, who had hurt others in her quest for power and control, but a woman who was also capable of love, of regret, of change. As the ambulance sped away, Emily felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Sam, his face etched with concern and love. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, pulling her close. Emily nodded, burying her face in his chest. "I will be," she whispered. "I just never thought I'd see her again after all these years." Sam held her tightly, his love and strength a balm to her battered soul. "I know, my love, but you're not alone anymore. You have me and Liam and a whole community of people who love you and support you. And together, we can face anything that comes our way." Emily looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears and gratitude. She knew that he was right, that she was stronger and braver than she had ever been before. And with her family by her side, she knew that she could weather any storm and come out the other side even stronger than before. The next day, as Emily and her family were packing up to leave the resort, a knock sounded at the door. Emily opened it to find Vanessa standing there, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes clear and focused. "Emily," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "I know I'm the last person you want to see right now, but I needed to talk to you before I left." Emily hesitated for a moment, her heart racing with fear and uncertainty. But something in Vanessa's face, in the way she held herself, made her step aside and let the older woman in. "I want to thank you," Vanessa said, her eyes filling with tears, "for saving my life yesterday. I know I don't deserve your kindness, not after everything I've done to you." Emily felt a lump rising in her throat, her emotions swirling like a hurricane inside her. "Vanessa," she said softly, her voice steady and clear, "I didn't do it for you. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Because I'm a nurse and a mother, and I couldn't just stand by and watch someone suffer, no matter who they were or what they had done to me." Vanessa nodded, her face crumpling with grief and regret. "I know," she whispered, "and that's what makes you such an extraordinary person, Emily. You have a heart that is pure and true, and a strength that I can only dream of." She took a deep, shuddering breath, her hands twisting in her lap. "I also wanted to tell you that I know about Liam. I know that he's my grandson and that he's the child you had with Andrew all those years ago." Emily felt a jolt of fear run through her, her arms instinctively wrapping around her son. "Vanessa, please," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Don't try to take him away from me. He's my whole world, and I won't let anyone hurt him, not even you." But Vanessa shook her head, a sad smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I'm not here to take him away from you, Emily. I'm here to tell you that I'm sorry. Sorry for the way I treated you, sorry for the pain I caused you and your family, and sorry for not being the kind of mother that Andrew needed, the kind of mother that you are to Liam." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I want you to have this," she said softly, pressing it into Emily's hand. "It was my mother's, and her mother's before her. A symbol of the love and strength that runs through our family, even when we don't always see it or appreciate it." Emily opened the box with trembling fingers, her breath catching in her throat as she saw the delicate, sparkling pendant inside. It was a small, perfect diamond, set in a band of gold and surrounded by tiny, glittering stones. "Vanessa," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears, "I can't accept this. It's too much, too precious." But Vanessa shook her head, a fierce light shining in her eyes. "No, Emily, it's not enough. Nothing will ever be enough to make up for what I did to you, for the years of pain and suffering I caused. But I want you to have it, as a reminder of the love and strength that you carry inside you, the love and strength that will always guide you and your family, no matter what challenges you face." Emily felt a rush of emotion wash over her, a love and gratitude so strong that it took her breath away. She knew in that moment that she had been wrong about Vanessa, that beneath the cold, hard exterior was a woman who was capable of great love and great change. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the pendant to her heart. "Thank you for this and for everything. I forgive you, Vanessa, and I hope that one day you can find the peace and happiness that you deserve." Vanessa smiled through her tears, her face transformed by a joy and lightness that Emily had never seen before. "I already have, Emily. Just by being here, just by seeing the love and strength that you and your family share, that's all the happiness I could ever ask for." And with that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving Emily and her family to bask in the warmth and love of each other's presence, ready to face whatever challenges and joys the future might bring. As Emily and her family walked hand in hand down the beach, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink behind them, she felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to face. But with Sam by her side and Liam as the light of her life, she knew that she could weather any storm. "I love you," she whispered, leaning her head on Sam's shoulder. "More than I ever thought possible." Sam smiled down at her, his eyes shining with love and devotion. "I love you too, Emily, and I always will, no matter what happens, no matter where life takes us." They walked on in silence for a moment, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the only sound in the world, and then Emily heard a shout of laughter and turned to see Liam racing towards them, his face alight with joy and excitement. "Mommy! Daddy!" he cried, leaping into their arms. "Look what I found!" He held out his hand, and Emily saw a small, perfect seashell nestled in his palm. It was a delicate spiral of pink and white, gleaming in the fading light of the sun. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said softly, taking the shell from his hand. "Just like you." Liam beamed up at her, his eyes sparkling with love and happiness. "I want to keep it forever," he said, his voice filled with wonder, "as a reminder of this perfect day and of how much I love you both." Emily felt her heart swell with love and pride, a love so strong that it took her breath away. She knew in that moment that this was what life was all about, the simple, perfect moments of joy and connection, the love that bound them all together as a family. "We'll keep it forever," she promised, wrapping her arms around her son and her husband. "Just like we'll keep each other, always and forever." And as they walked on down the beach, the seashell clutched tightly in Liam's hand, Emily knew that she had finally found the happiness and love that she had always dreamed of. It had been a long and winding road, filled with heartbreak and pain and struggle, but in the end, it had all been worth it, because now she had everything she had ever wanted: a loving family, a fulfilling life, and a love that would last a lifetime. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in a riot of color and light, Emily knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Home, in the arms of the people she loved most in the world, ready to face whatever adventures and challenges life might bring, together, always and forever.